Rox played a ball game last night at Campanelli Stadium and then had to be on the bus this morning at 5 a.m. With a series this big and a road trip this important, you would hope that in the thick of a pennant race that they would have left the ballpark last night and gotten home, gotten a little rest, because sleeping on the bus is not easy, especially since the bus company sent us one of the short buses. Not quite like the school bus, but this was a short bus nevertheless. Just to put it in perspective, I'm about 5'10" and a half, and can barely get my legs out in front of me. Kind of had to angle them off to the right. Can you imagine what it was like for guys who were 6'5" or whatever, like Joey Baker and Tony Stutz and Craig Lewis? They couldn't even sit in their seats straight forward. It is a long ride to be sitting in cramped conditions, and I'm wondering, and this is just a guess, if that isn't what partially contributed to Nestor Smith's early departure in this ballgame. He's been battling a groin injury. Nestor said that the groin has been bothering him, and I'm sure that that long bus ride, sitting in an uncomfortable position, might not have been the best thing for him. And the batter is Jake Daubert, who is 1 for 2. I gotta tell you, here at the L'Estade Municipal, they're allowed to smoke cigarettes, but the ones being smoked right in front of the broadcast booth are some of the funniest I have smelled. If I start to sound a little funny on the air, maybe you get the picture.
By the end of the series, many were asking what the umpires were smoking. The entire trip to Quebec was dazed and confused. The long ride on a short bus, the delay at the border that we discussed last episode, along with the rooms at the hotel not being ready. But when the Rox finally took the field, they looked ready to tangle with the Capitals, who they trailed by just 2 games in the standings. Newly acquired Darren Blakely homered in his very first at-bat for Brockton. Quebec answered with a 2-run homer by Eddie Lantigua in the bottom of the first. Outfielder Nestor Smith re-injured his groin and had to come out of the game in the second inning. Then in the third, Mike Davis was batting for the Rox against Keith Dunn.
Now a 1-1 offering. Comes inside, moves Davis off the plate and says that it hit him in the arm, but the plate umpire is disagreeing. Davis trying to show a mark now and not getting the call from Sean Francis.
Now, the Rox had had their differences before with this particular umpiring crew, which included Sean Francis and Todd Shield. But that incident with Davis barely registered on the radar. It became a very solid pitching duel between Dunn and Mike Marchesano. The Rox barked about the strike zone a few times, but largely they kept their composure and tied the game 2-2 in the 7th inning. Now, Marchesano gave up a 2-out single in the 8th, so the Capitals had a runner on first base, 2 outs, and that is when the umpires began to steal the show.
Here's the 0-2 pitch. Swung on, high pop up into shallow center field. It will be the right fielder and the center fielder. It's Blakely making an outstanding catch. They're saying he did not catch the ball. Relay throw to the plate, not in time. Throw down to third, tag applied by Davis. But a run did score. And Blakely is going to argue, and so will Ed Noddle. I cannot believe that they did not rule a catch. Blakely with an outstanding effort in center field to make a diving catch. And the base umpire said no, that it was not caught. Ed Noddle is arguing vehemently out in front of second base. Blakely standing there in disbelief. Blakely throws his glove up into the air as the argument continues. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Did they also call the runner safe at third base? Garcia's still standing at third base. He was tagged out by Davis, who apparently was thrown out of the ballgame. And now Ed Noddle is really going to go ballistic. There was no doubt at third base that Garcia was tagged out and thrown out there by Davis. Well, Davis is out of the ball game, and Jake Daubert is coming out to third base.
The Rox lost that game 3-2, and we're now 3 games out of first place. On the bus after the game, the players and coaches told me that when Blakely complained about the ridiculous trap call, Shield had replied, "Watch out, Blakely, I'll see you tomorrow." Shield's decision to say that was far worse than either one of his controversial calls, because that cast into doubt his impartiality. The Rox players now fully expected a screw job the next day. And they got one. The Rox committed 2 errors in the first inning, which turned into 2 Quebec runs, but that is all that Greg Salvold would allow, shutting out Les Capitals the rest of the way. But the Rox were struggling against Quebec's starter, Jeff Harris. Now, Harris was an excellent pitcher, so good that the Seattle Mariners would purchase his contract the following year, and he would pitch in the major leagues in 2005 and 2006. In this particular game, as good pitchers often do, he was benefiting from a slowly expanding strike zone.
Here's the 1-1 offering. That is a fastball that catches the inside corner. Rosario is barking at the home plate umpire, has his hands outstretched, and is now pointing at where he thought that pitch was. Rosario probably arguing that, "Weren't calling that a strike when I was catching, why are you calling it now?" So 0-2 pitch comes inside. Bustos has to get out of the way, and the first base umpire, Todd Shield, punches him out. Bustos throws the helmet down, and that's the way it's going to go tonight, I think. Bustos just ducked out of the way of that pitch. From here, it did not look like the bat went through the zone, and now Shield has already thrown somebody out of the game. It looks like Bustos, and here we go again. Ed Noddle coming across the field, and it was just a matter of time. Todd Shield said last night some comments that made the Rox feel like he would not be fair to them tonight, and sure enough, here we go. Bustos has been thrown out of the game, and now Noddle has been thrown out of the ball game. Well, this is just unfortunate. This important of a series, and you have the umpires taking front and center stage.
Recapping, the count is 0-2. Saul gets a pitch thrown at his head, bails out of the way. Appeal made down to first base where Shield is umpiring. He says strike 3. Whether or not Saul's bat went through the strike zone is debatable. From my angle, it looked like it did not. Shield had a better angle. He said it did. But as an umpire, Shield had made a huge mistake with his implied threat the previous night. It cost him his credibility, which is everything for an umpire. And then to make matters worse, he stared down Saul all the way back to the dugout. Bustos gets back to the dugout, looks out, sees Shield glaring at him. So he grabs his crotch and gets ejected from the game. But you know what? He was provoked by Shield. It was almost as if he wanted to throw him out of the game. Ed Noddle argued he also gets the heave-ho. Now, normally I was reluctant to give umps too much grief on the air because the level of umpiring was pretty close to the caliber of play in the Northeast League. There were going to be mistakes made. I got to know many of the umps on a first-name basis, and some of them asked me to give a shout-out to their family or friends listening on the internet, which I was happy to do. But in this instance, I felt justified in being critical, very critical, because this seemed much worse than blown calls. This seemed like a vendetta. Well, the Rox batters crumbled as home plate umpire Yves Gagnon's strike zone got wider and wider.
Here's the payoff pitch. Matos started down to first base. He is called out on strikes. Looks back at the home plate umpire as he walks away. That's the way it's going to go tonight. They wondered if this was going to be 12 against 9. And the 1-0 pitch. It's one of those that looked off the plate. He's called a strike. Lewis looks back and shakes his head, now walks away from the plate. I have a feeling that before Ed Noddle departed, he was thrown out of the game back in the 4th inning. I have a feeling that he told his team, can't afford to lose any more players. You guys have to go out and try to win this game and quit arguing. Because the Rox have been biting their lips, I think. First pitch to Brown. That's in there for a called strike. For one pitch. That's in there for another called strike. 1-2 pitch. Another called strike. Brown is going to get ejected for arguing. And now he's not done arguing. He throws the bat down and now is spreading his hands to show just how far off the plate that was. He points at the home plate umpire, throws his helmet down, throws his gloves down. They have been keeping their emotions in check ever since Bustos and Nato got ejected, and now a bat was thrown out from the dugout by the Rox. I don't see where that came from. Probably Bobby Brown. Another bat comes flying out of the dugout.
So the Rox lost 2-0, and we're now 4 games behind Quebec with only 14 games remaining. To call the final game of the series a do-or-die contest would not be an overstatement. Be sure to click the subscribe button to follow my wild and wacky journey with the Brockton Rox, because more episodes are on the way. Thanks for watching.